Hey guys, I got two concepts that are closely tied to each other that all major religions talk about regarding finances. Um, I'm going to go through kind of some quotes real quick here that each one says, and I will explain kind of what my view is on that as well. But number one is regarding debt, okay? So Christianity is going to talk about the borrower is the slave to the lender, which is, a concept. Hey, look, you are now enslaving yourself by getting in debt. It also talks about in the Bible being content with your wages. So I think a lot of the debt situation here is related to some of the things the other religions are going to talk about as I get further down, which really is moderation and living within your means. All right, so the Bible is talking about borrower, slave to lender, be content with your wages. All right, now we have Islam. They have this word called riba, which is prohibited, and that is lending with interest. They view that as a bad thing, that you are maybe taking advantage of somebody by borrowing them money with interest or lending them money with interest is a bad thing that they are saying. Okay, so now we have Christianity and Islam agreeing that debt is bad. Then we have Judaism. I know Christianity and Judaism are somewhat similar, but one of the tenets that I found was in Judaism is lending with no interest is a good deed. So if you lend with no interest, that is, you are doing a good thing. So I think that is really interesting that it just says that it's good to lend with no interest. So it's maybe more of a heart posture thing. Buddhism talks about living in moderation and eliminating excessive craving. So this kind of goes into that debt thing. Oftentimes with how easy it is here in America with the credit card and all that good stuff, that excessive craving, man, I need that thing. Yeah, I'll just go into debt for it. All right, and living in moderation where we don't need to buy all this stupid stuff. Hinduism has the word dharma, which is duty, which includes the responsible management of wealth and avoidance of excessive attachment. So sometimes we have that excessive attachment to an object that we want to buy, and then we go into debt. So it's almost like both, even though these religions are maybe not wording it the same thing, it seems to me that when we come from a place of contentment, we avoid debt. It sounds like it's almost like a heart place that avoids debt. Debt generally is an excessive spending in these specific categories. And I know in America here, the entire financial system runs off debt. And I am going to get into that in just a second here, but I want to go through the rest of the religions here, which is just the Tao Te Ching, is living simply, not chasing excessive wealth. So we have that American dream. I think all of us want freedom, is really what it is. We want to be free, and we view those all those bills we have to pay as negative things. And the more greed that is built up, the more excessive wealth chasing there is here in America, raises the income floor for everyone and continuously trends everyone towards having to be in a mindset of I need to chase wealth because the floor is the barrier for entry to buy a home in something or something is it's raising. So I can totally see that. So what I think is happening is it's not necessarily that people are bad, but people are now struggling because everyone as a whole is not being content, and they always want that bigger and better thing, and they want to run the rat race, and it kind of hurts everybody. And I think what the religions are telling us is that being content makes a harmonious world for everyone, and debt is a bad thing. And in order to boost the economy, they had to use a lot of debt. And our whole system pretty much runs off of debt. Debt is pretty much the only thing that exists financially here. With the fractional reserve banking system, they can lend out 9 times what they have. I think it's 9 times. So if they have $1,000, they can lend out 9,000 of money that they just made up with the fractional reserve banking system. And I want to talk to you guys about debt real quick, because I understand that if you want to start a business, just the way our financial system works, debt is very important if you can manage that well. And it's something that I've seen as being a valuable thing, especially if you're using that debt wisely in order to maybe get like a rental property or some sort of asset that is going to pay us back and pay us more, fostering a good relationship with our bank because they get their money back and I make a profit. What I think the religions are talking about here is something slightly different. They're talking about debt in the sense of personal gratification or unmet desires, and not living in harmony with the world itself. Okay, so if I need debt, I think a majority of the debt is because I'm not content. And that is what I see as the issue. But what I also want to comment is that given the way our society works, we have to be cognizant of how the financial system works. I mean, it makes financial sense to buy your home using debt, a mortgage, instead of renting, generally because that money is somewhat being saved, and you can then hold on to that capital that you paid in debt. So if we think about like a mortgage, let's just say we got a $300,000 mortgage, and let's just say in interest we paid about $200,000 in interest. And these are rough numbers, but over that 30 years, we paid $500,000 for that house, $300,000 for the house, $200,000 in interest over the life of that house. The house is probably worth at least $500,000 by the time that we sell it 30 years later, if we chose to do that. So you are kind of responsibly using debt to protect your capital. So now that debt kind of was held on. And let's just say theoretically the housing market stays still for 30 years. We take out debt on a house. We pay $200,000 in interest to get that house now. Over those 30 years, it would be very likely, especially if we're paying $1,000 a month in rent, $1,000 in rent, $12,000 a year, times 10, that's $120,000, times 20, that's $240,000, times 3, that's 30, that's $360,000. So if your rent was $1,000, you would pay more in rent than you would in interest. So financially, that makes sense to use debt in that scenario. So I think the majority of the situation is being content, making wise financial decisions, such as choosing to own your home instead of renting, because you then can translate that home into capital later if you so chose to do so. I'm not going to categorize that in the same category as debt being as bad. And I think when we talk about financial literacy, when we have good and bad debt, those are two things. I think what the religions are really focusing on is bad debt. And the reality is something that Dave Ramsey teaches is that to avoid debt at all costs. And why I believe that is a good thing that he should be teaching to a lot of people, and maybe 90% of people should do that. It really just comes down to a personal behavioral pattern. They can't handle debt. They physically and emotionally are not disciplined enough to handle debt. So it totally makes sense from a religious standpoint when we're trying to speak to the masses to avoid debt. And I would even say for the Islam thing, the riba, it's like I'm profiting on their misfortune. It might be the heart posture that they are attempting to combat there. Like, sick dude, I'm just going to, I'm going to give them money. They can buy whatever they want. I don't care that they're making a bad financial decision. I'm profiting. And I think that is the thing that is the problem. If I lend you money and you're turning that money into more money, then we both win. That is a completely different, if I lend you at 10%, 10 grand, I lend you at 10%, I make 11, I come home with $1,000, but you take that 10 grand and you turn it into 20 grand, you pay me 11 grand back and you keep 9 grand. That is a completely different thing here than being a slave to the lender and screwing someone over, doing riba, and all of that good stuff. So that's just something that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I thought that was a really interesting concept, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Have a wonderful day.